The Rock finds a lost child at the airport. What he does next stuns everyone. The Rock was on his way to catch a flight for a film set, but fate had other plans. He moved through the busy airport terminal, his mind on the work waiting for him, when something caught his eye, amidst the usual chaos of people rushing to their gates. There was a young girl standing alone, her small figure barely noticeable in the crowd, but her eyes wide with fear were fixed on something, or rather, someone. Rock slowed his steps, instinctively drawn toward her. There was no one with her, no frantic parent running around. She was just there, clutching a worn teddy bear and looking utterly lost. Her clothes were scruffy, her hair tangled, and her face pale with worry. Something about her stood out, a silent cry for help, in a place where no one seemed to notice. As Rock approached, her gaze shifted to him, and her lips trembled without hesitation. He knelt down to her level, offering a calm smile. "Hey, there are? You okay?" he asked in a gentle voice. The girl hesitated before speaking, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't find my mom." Rock's heart dropped. There was no panic in her voice, just quiet fear. He looked around the terminal. People passed by, too absorbed in their own worlds to notice the girl's vulnerability, stood in sharp contrast to the fast-paced crowd. Rock, usually a man who kept to himself, found himself torn between heading off to his busy schedule and doing something that felt right. He couldn't walk away from this. Rock glanced around once more. People were moving swiftly, lost in their own lives, oblivious to the girl's distress. His instincts told him that he couldn't just walk away, even if it meant being late to the film set. "Don't worry, we'll find your mom," he reassured her. Standing up and looking for anyone who might be frantically searching for a lost child, the girl clutched her teddy bear tightly, her eyes scanning the crowd as if hoping for some sign of familiarity. Her small hands trembled, her other hand still tightly clutching the bear, as if it were her only source of comfort in this chaotic place. As Rock started walking with the girl trying to find help, he noticed a woman approaching them. She was dressed in a sharp business suit, her heels clicking sharply on the floor. With each step, her eyes seemed fixed on them as she walked briskly toward the girl. "Is she all right?" the woman asked, her tone almost dismissive. There was no panic in her voice, just an almost clinical concern. Rock nodded, trying to read the woman's demeanor. "She's lost. She can't find her mom." The woman's eyes flicked between Rock and the girl, and then she quickly stepped forward, placing a hand on the girl's shoulder. "She's fine," she said firmly, though her voice seemed to carry an underlying urgency. "She's just being a little dramatic. I'm her guardian. I'll take care of it." Rock's brow furrowed. The way the woman spoke didn't sit right with him. The calmness in her voice contrasted sharply with the girl's distress. He couldn't ignore the feeling that something was off. The girl's eyes looked up at Rock, and in that moment, he saw the fear in her eyes. Fear not just of being lost, but of the woman in front of her. Rock's protective instinct flared up. "Are you sure you're her guardian?" he asked, keeping his voice steady. The woman, not missing a beat, gave a forced smile. "Yes, I am. Now please, let me take care of this." But something didn't feel right. Rock knew he had to stay close to watch over the situation. He had no way of knowing what exactly was going on, but his gut told him this wasn't a simple lost child scenario. Rock couldn't shake the unease settling in his stomach. There was something in the way. The woman spoke, something about the way she was acting, that didn't quite add up. The girl's wide eyes, locked on Rock, spoke volumes. She wasn't just lost. There was fear in her gaze, a fear that didn't match the woman's calm demeanor. The woman's grip on the child's arm tightened, pulling the girl closer, as if shielding her from Rock. Questioning gaze. I told you. She's fine. Let's not make this a bigger deal than it is. She said, her tone now more forceful. Rock instincts told him to press further, but he knew better than to escalate things too quickly. The girl's soft sobs echoed in his mind as he glanced down at her trembling form. The teddy bear she clutched had lost some of its fluff, its edges worn from years of use, but it was her only comfort right now. Why don't we get some help from security? Rock suggested, his voice calm but firm. He could feel the woman's eyes harden at his words, and her grip on the girl's arm seemed to tighten even more. No need for that. The woman insisted, her smile now tight and strained. I've got it under control. But there was no warmth in her eyes, only a coldness that made Rock's suspicion grow. His mind raced, weighing his options. He didn't want to make the situation worse, but he couldn't just let it go. He had to know the truth. Just then, a security guard passed by, noticing the tense interaction. Rock's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the woman's increasingly defensive posture, and the guard low, watching them carefully. Everything okay here? The security officer asked, his tone neutral but attentive. Rock's eyes locked with the officer's. This girl says she's lost, but this woman claims to be her guardian. I'm not so sure. The woman's face turned pale for a brief moment, but she quickly regained her composure. This is none of your business. She snapped, her voice raising slightly. I'm her guardian, and we're fine. Please just mind your own business. But the officer wasn't backing down. We need to make sure she's okay, the guard said firmly, his eyes flicking toward the girl who was now visibly trembling in the woman's grip. The woman's eyes darted around her posture, suddenly rigid, her earlier confidence wavering. Rock noticed it. It was a crack in her facade, and he knew they were getting closer to the truth. The security officer stepped closer, his posture now more assertive. Rock could sense the woman's anxiety increasing. She shifted her weight from foot to foot, her eyes darting nervously. She clearly wasn't prepared for this level of scrutiny. I'm calling for backup, the security guard said. Pulling out his radio, the tension in the air thickened as the woman's smile began to fade, replaced by a look of pure frustration. Rock's eyes stayed on the girl who had barely made a sound since he'd stepped in. Her small body trembled slightly as she held the bear close, but her eyes kept flickering toward the woman who was still holding onto her arm, a little too tightly. The fear hadn't left her face, and Rock's concern grew deeper. I can't let you take her? The woman suddenly said, her voice now cold and hard. She stood straighter, her eyes narrowing, and Rock could sense that whatever was going on, it wasn't going to end peacefully. The guard paused, sensing the change in the woman's demeanor. He looked over at Rock, who gave him a subtle nod. We're not going to let her go until we figure out what's going on. Rock said firmly, his voice steady but insistent. The woman's gaze snapped to Rock. You don't understand. She hissed, her hands shaking now, betraying the calm she tried so hard to maintain. I have to take her. I have to finish what I started. Rock's heart raced. The words caught him off guard. What do you mean by that? He asked, his voice calm, trying to de-escalate, but also demanding answers. The woman looked around quickly, as though deciding whether to say more. Then, with a sharp breath, she finally spoke, almost too quietly to hear. She's not just lost. She's running away. Rock's mind spun. Running away, he repeated, trying to process what he had just heard. The girl was running from something, someone. He looked back at the child, whose eyes were wide with terror now, and his protective instinct kicked into overdrive before he could ask anything more. The sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. A man wearing a police uniform appeared with two other officers. He surveyed the scene quickly before focusing on the woman. "We've received a report of a missing child," the officer said, his eyes scanning the woman before shifting to the girl. "Is everything all right?" The woman's entire body stiffened. She opened her mouth to protest, but nothing came out. Rockheart skipped a beat as he watched the officer approach their hands, steady and confident. The officer's presence seemed to deflate the woman's composure. She opened her mouth several times to speak, but faltered each time. It was as if the truth was finally catching up with her, and she couldn't hide behind her facade any longer. Rock eyes stayed locked on the girl whose face was streaked with tears, her once tight grip on the teddy bear. Loosening slightly, it was clear to him now. The woman had been hiding something. The girl wasn't just lost, she was terrified. And the woman was no guardian. The police officer stepped forward and placed a hand gently on the girl's shoulder. "Are you okay, sweetheart? What's your name?" His tone was kind, reassuring, as if to create a safe space for her to speak. The girl looked up at the officer, then at Rock, before finally finding her voice. "Mia," she whispered, her voice trembling. I was with my mom, and then I couldn't find her." Rockheart sank. The girl's words confirmed his worst fear. She wasn't running away. She was separated from her real mother, and this woman was something entirely different. The police officer turned to the woman. "We're going to need you to step aside and answer some questions. Let's see if your story matches up." The woman's face went pale, and her eyes darted around. She hesitated for a moment, as if considering running, but the two officers flanked her on either side, blocking her escape. I didn't do anything wrong," the woman stammered, trying to regain her composure, but the fear in her voice was unmistakable. Rock's attention shifted back to Mia, who was now crying openly. Her tears were quiet, but they were enough to break. Rock resolve, he bent down to her level and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Hey, Mia," he said softly. "It's going to be okay. We're going to find your mom. You're not alone anymore." Mia looked up at Rock, her wide eyes filled with a mix of sadness and hope. "Will she come back for me?" she asked, her voice. Breaking Rock's chest tightened, but he forced a reassuring smile. "We'll make sure you're safe. Mia, you'll see your mom again?" As the officers began questioning the woman, it became clearer that her story was falling apart. She had claimed to be Mia's guardian, but her lack of knowledge about the girl's family and her reluctance to provide any real information only deepened the suspicion. It wasn't long before the truth emerged. Mia's mother had been frantic searching the airport for her daughter. The woman wasn't her guardian. She was a complete stranger who had tried to take advantage of Mia's vulnerable state. As the police took the woman aside to continue questioning her, Rock remained kneeling beside Mia, his hand still gently resting on her shoulder. He could feel the weight of her sadness, and it broke his heart to see this young girl so lost and confused, especially when all she wanted was to be reunited with her mother. Minutes later, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed through the terminal. Rock looked up just in time to see a woman running toward them. Her eyes were wild with panic, her face red from exertion. But there was a look of desperate relief when she spotted Mia. "Mia," the woman cried, her voice breaking with emotion. She pushed past. The officers knelt beside her daughter, wrapping her arms around the girl in a tight embrace. "Oh, baby, I was so scared I thought I'd lost you forever." Mia, still in shock, didn't immediately respond, but as her mother held her, the tears began to flow again. This time, a mix of relief and exhaustion, she clung to her mother, burying her face in her chest. Rock watched the moment unfold, feeling a deep sense of relief wash over him. He had done the right thing, and now the little girl was in the arms of her real mother. The woman who had claimed to be her guardian was now sitting in the back of a squad car, her false story crumbling with every question. The police asked Mia. "I'm so sorry," her mother whispered through her tears. "I should have been paying more attention. I should have never let you out of my sight." Rock felt a pang in his heart. He could understand the mother's guilt, but he also knew this could have happened to anyone. The important thing was that Mia was safe, and they had found each other again. The police officer seeing the reunion gave Rock a nod of appreciation. "Thanks for stepping in," he said quietly. "We wouldn't have caught her without your help." Rock smiled faintly. "I'm just glad Mia is safe." He glanced down at the girl one more time. "You'll be okay now," he said. Softly, as Mia's sobs began to quiet down in her mother's arms, as the officers led the woman away. Rock stood up, ready to finally make his way to the film set, but before he left, he turned to Mia and her mother one last time. "I'm happy you're both together again," he said, with a warm, reassuring smile. "Take care of each other." Mia's mother looked up at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you for everything," she said, her voice still shaky but full of appreciation. "You don't know what you've done for us today." Rock nodded and turned toward the exit, his heart a little lighter than when he had first walked into the airport. It had been a detour, yes, but one that had brought him face to face with the kind of real connection that reminded him of the power of kindness and the importance of looking out for one another no matter how busy life gets. As the plane ascended into the sky, Rock settled back into his seat. Closing his eyes for a brief moment, the sound of the engine's humming was a welcome distraction from his racing thoughts. He had been through countless chaotic situations before, but this one felt different, more personal, more significant, as the aircraft leveled out. He couldn't help but replay the scene over and over again. In his mind, he had been just another person passing through that airport, just another stranger in a crowd. But the girl's cry for help, her fear had reached him. In that moment, Rock realized something profound. Even the smallest actions could have monumental effects. His decision to stop and offer help had altered the course of an entire situation. Rock had always believed that doing the right thing, no matter how small the gesture was, what truly mattered, and today he'd been reminded of that. But the thought lingered with him. How many times had he walked past someone in need, without even noticing? How many times had he missed an opportunity to make a difference because it felt too inconvenient, or he was too caught up in his own life? The thought didn't sit well with him, but it also sparked something inside him, something that felt like a quiet determination. He realized that the simple act of pausing to help had changed everything. It wasn't about being a hero. It was about noticing the people around him and offering kindness. When it mattered most, in that moment, he understood that sometimes the smallest gestures could make the biggest impact. And as he looked out the window, he promised himself to never overlook an opportunity to make a difference again. Share this video with someone who might need a reminder that kindness always makes a difference. Stay tuned for more, and remember, every action counts. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.